What would you do if you watched a helpless puppy collapse on a sun-soaked golf course, struck by boys who thought money made them untouchable? What would you do if a young woman stood alone, shaking, with no one left to defend her? This story isn't about violence. It's about the moment a quiet, battle-scarred Navy SEAL stepped out of the shadows and changed two lives forever. A broken dog, a girl fighting to hold on, and a man who believed that courage is the closest thing we have to a miracle. If stories of faith, justice, and second chances touch your heart, please subscribe, because the next miracle might be the one you've been waiting for. The sun pressed down like a molten weight on the Pacific Crest Country Club. Heat rippled across the rolling fairways, bending the horizon into a wavering mirage, turning every manicured blade of grass into a shard of glowing green glass. It was the kind of heat that made people impatient, sharp-tongued, and quick to cruelty. Aiden Cross knew that better than most. Aiden, at 33, stood near the maintenance shed bordering the ninth fairway, wiping a streak of sweat from his temple with the back of a calloused hand. He was tall, easily 6'3", with the sinewed physique of a man carved from discipline, not vanity. Muscles traced clear lines beneath his plain black work shirt, the kind of lean power earned from years of carrying gear across deserts and diving into unforgiving seas. His skin bore the sun's permanent embrace, bronzed and weather-beaten, with faint scars that caught the light like pale silver threads. His hair, close-cropped and dark brown, was the regulation style he had kept even after stepping away from the Navy SEALs. Old habits like ghosts clung to him, and his eyes, an intense steel gray, carried a depth that made people instinctively lower their voices around him. They were the eyes of a man who had seen villages emptied by war, friends buried under collapsing walls, and missions that gnawed pieces out of his soul. Beneath the rigid posture and military precision of his movements, there lived a weariness, a quiet gravity that spoke of nights haunted by memories that didn't soften with time. He was working a temporary maintenance job here, trying to anchor himself in civilian life, away from the deafening silence of his empty cabin on the outskirts of town. He liked the simplicity of it: fix the sprinklers, trim the grass, keep his head down. Routine, predictability, repetition, things he never had in combat, things he wasn't sure he deserved, but desperately needed. From where he stood, he could see a young woman carrying a golf bag nearly half her size. Mira Allen, 24, slim and soft-featured, had delicate shoulders that strained under the weight of the clubs. She wore the standard Caddie uniform, khaki shorts and a white polo, but the fabric clung damply to her from the oppressive heat. Her long, dark hair was tied in a messy ponytail, a few strands sticking to her cheeks. She had gentle amber-brown eyes and a nervous, earnest way of speaking that made her seem younger than she was. Mira smiled often, but the smile never quite reached her eyes. Not anymore. She was new to Pacific Crest, taking the job to cover mounting rent and working overtime whenever she could. What the members didn't know was that she had been secretly caring for a German Shepherd puppy she found behind a grocery store dumpster 3 weeks ago. The puppy, Bolt, was small for his breed, around 4 months old, with big paws he hadn't yet grown into, one ear stubbornly flopping to the side, while the other stood up straight. His coat was a mix of soft sable and black, and his eyes were an unnervingly bright gold brown, curious, loyal, always searching for Mira. Though Bolt wasn't trained like a SEAL dog, he had the instincts: alert, protective, always watching the world with a seriousness that didn't match his puppy clumsiness. Mira hid him behind a cluster of bushes near the fairway, checking on him between rounds, giving him water whenever the coast was clear. But today's heat was merciless. Bolt's water bowl had long dried under the sun. Aiden noticed movement from the bushes. At first, he thought it was a squirrel, but then a small shape stumbled out, tongue lolling, eyes unfocused. Bolt. The little shepherd pup waddled unevenly toward the group on the green, confused and desperate for Mira's scent, for shade, for anything. Mira turned in time to see him, panic racing across her face. She froze mid-step, her hands tightening around the strap of the golf bag, as if the act of willing him back into the shadows could undo what was happening. But it was already too late. The group playing at the tee, 4 young adults in branded polos and shining white sneakers, noticed the intruder. They were the type of wealthy members who saw the course as their kingdom, its workers as mere moving furniture. The leader of the group, Tyler Van Horn, 25, had slick blonde hair, a gym-built body, and the perpetual smirk of a man who had never once been told no. He wore mirrored sunglasses and an arrogance that radiated from him like its own form of heat. "What the hell is that mutt doing on the course?" Tyler snapped. He stepped back from his ball, irritation twisting his features. Bolt, thinking he was being spoken to kindly, wagged his tail. A small, hopeful wag. Mira rushed forward, shaking her head. "No, please, he's harmless. He's just looking for me." Tyler grabbed his wooden 3-wood golf club, holding it like a baseball bat. "Get lost, dumb dog," he snarled. He swung low, not hard enough to kill, but hard enough to hurt, just as Mira screamed his name. Bolt dodged the full brunt by sheer luck, but the club still clipped his side. The puppy yelped, stumbling sideways and collapsing onto the green grass. The sound of that yelp hit Aiden like a blow. For a moment, the world tilted, not into the fairway, but into a memory. Afghanistan. A dusty street outside Kandahar. A small boy's terrified cry as a militia soldier raised a rifle. Not because of war, but because cruelty was easy when no one stopped you. And Aiden had stopped him, but far too late to erase the sound. Sounds stay. Always. Aiden's jaw tightened, his fists clenched. The air around him felt thicker, hotter. Tyler and his friends laughed off the incident, brushing it away like an inconvenience. "Ugh, these workers don't follow rules," one of the girls said, adjusting her designer visor. "Why is there even a stray on the grounds?" Tyler lifted the club again, irritated. "I swear, if someone doesn't get rid of this mangy thing—" He didn't finish the sentence, because Aiden was already walking toward them. He didn't stride angrily, didn't shout, didn't posture. He simply moved with the cold, deliberate precision of someone who had ended fights in the most efficient way possible. His boots pressed steadily into the grass, leaving faint impressions behind him. Something in his aura, his upright posture, the hardness in his gaze, made the friends' laughter flicker out. Tyler noticed him, scoffing. "What? You think you're some kind of hero? Mind your own business, maintenance man." Mira dropped to her knees beside Bolt, scooping the trembling puppy into her arms. Tears stung her eyes, her voice cracking. "Please, Bolt, please look at me, boy." Aiden's eyes flicked between Mira's shaking hands, Bolt's whimpers, and Tyler's raised club. Aiden's voice, when it came, was low, too calm. "Put the club down." Tyler barked a laugh. "Or what?" Aiden took one more step forward, now close enough that Tyler had to tilt his head up to meet his eyes. Up close, Aiden was even more imposing. Broad shoulders, thick arms, neck corded with muscle, every inch of him speaking of combat readiness. "You don't want to know," Aiden said. And the way he said it, the depth, the quiet finality, made Tyler's confidence waver. Mira looked up at Aiden, her breath catching. Relief, fear, and something like awe intermingled in her expression. Aiden crouched down beside her, scanning Bolt with the quick efficiency of someone who had assessed hundreds of injured beings under fire. Bolt whimpered, then pressed his head into Aiden's palm, recognizing safety. "He's hurt," Mira whispered, voice quivering. "I didn't mean for him to come out. He was thirsty. Aiden shook his head gently. "It's not your fault." But his gaze, when it lifted to Tyler, was sharp enough to cut. Tyler stiffened, cheeks flushing. "It was an accident." "You swung," Aiden replied. "That's not an accident." The tension grew heavy, electric. The heat had nothing on it. One of Tyler's friends tugged his sleeve. "Dude, let's just go. This guy looks dangerous." But Tyler, ashamed in front of his friends, puffed up his chest. "I'm not scared of some washed-up groundskeeper." Aiden's lips barely moved, but Mira saw something shift behind his eyes. Something dark. Something that had nothing to do with this golf course. He stood slowly, towering over Tyler. "Walk away," Aiden said softly. "This is your last chance." Tyler snorted in fake amusement, but took a step back. Aiden didn't chase him, didn't raise his voice, didn't threaten. He simply stood still, the way mountains stand still, unmoved by noise, by bluster, by pretended power. Tyler muttered curses as he left, but none of them stuck, not against a man like Aiden. When the group retreated, Mira finally let out a shaky breath. "Thank you," she whispered. Aiden knelt again, carefully examining Bolt's side. "He'll be okay, but he needs water and rest. I'll help you." Mira nodded, brushing tears off her cheeks. For a moment, Aiden's heart tugged, an echo of something human he thought he'd buried overseas. Something like protectiveness. Something like purpose. As he carried Bolt toward the maintenance shed shade, he couldn't help glancing back at the fading figures of Tyler and his friends. Their footsteps were disappearing, but their shadows were not. And deep down, in that instinct honed by years of surviving ambushes and betrayals, Aiden felt something unsettling. This wasn't over. Cruel people rarely walked away quietly. They regrouped, they retaliated. The moment the wooden club splintered without knowing why, the world around them stepped onto another battlefield. The blistering heat, one shaped the broken halves dangled from his grip, but like the remains of a threat that had never stood a chance. Nonetheless, Mira knelt on the grass, this time, clutching Bolt to her chest. Her thin arms trembling as she tried to steady her in arms. The puppy whined something inside Aiden, his small body had long been numb, ribs fluttering like a trapped the burning sun of the Tyler Van Horn and his group stood a few steps away, their bravado faltering under Aiden's imposing presence. Aiden didn't raise his voice, didn't posture, didn't move, except to lower the broken club pieces to the ground with quiet finality. His stance was deliberate, feet planted, shoulders squared, chin lifted just enough to signal he was done tolerating the cruelty. And though he spoke only one word, spoken with the precision of a soldier issuing an order, it carried a weight that cut through the manicured stillness of the course. "Leave!" Tyler spat on the grass, more out of wounded pride than courage. "You think you can scare me, big guy?" he taunted, but his voice cracked, betraying him. Aiden said nothing. Sometimes silence was louder than any threat. The young man gripping the golf bag beside Tyler shifted nervously. His name was Brian Carter, a thin, pale-faced kid with freckled skin and anxious eyes that darted between the broken club and Aiden's unmoving stare. Brian was 20, lanky, and clearly out of place among the wealthy brutes he followed. His sandy hair clung to his forehead from the heat, and his fingers trembled slightly as though he hated every second of what had unfolded, but lacked the spine to step away. He whispered, "Tyler, maybe we should just go." But Tyler's ego was a fragile, volatile thing. He shoved Brian aside. "Shut up." He jabbed a finger toward Mira. She let her stray wander onto private grounds. She should be fired, and that mutt should be put down. Bolt whimpered, and Mira held him tighter, her voice cracking. "Please don't talk about him like that." Before Tyler could retort, a shrill whistle cut through the air. The course manager approached in hurried, clipped steps. Mr. Reeves was a man in his late 40s, short and thinning at the crown, with a potbelly poorly tucked behind a navy blue polo with the club's crest. Sweat pooled on his scalp and dampened the collar of his shirt. His expression bore the strained politeness of someone forced to tolerate the rich to keep his job. "What is going on here?" Reeves demanded, though he directed the question only toward Tyler, ignoring the broken club and Mira's tear-streaked face entirely. Tyler immediately straightened, slipping back into the persona of the charming heir. "Reeves, finally, your staff is out of control." He gestured at Mira like she was an inconvenient stain on the lawn. "She brought a dangerous animal onto the course. It ran in front of my swing. It could have caused serious injury." Aiden clenched his jaw, but Mira spoke through her shaking voice. "He's not dangerous. He's a puppy, and he—" Reeves cut her off sharply. "Ms. Allen, you know pets aren't allowed anywhere on the property. This is a serious violation." He wiped the sweat from his brow with a handkerchief, refusing to meet her eyes. "Pack your things. You're suspended until further notice." Mira's face went white. "Suspended? But he didn't—" "You heard him," Tyler sneered. "You're lucky you're not being fired on the spot." "Enough," Aiden snapped, not loud, but sharp enough that even Reeves flinched. Reeves finally looked at him, narrowing his eyes as if recognizing Aiden for the first time, not just as a maintenance worker, but as a presence. "Mr. Cross," Reeves said, adjusting his stance with forced authority, "this is not your concern." Aiden stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of Mira and Bolt. "She didn't bring him onto the course willingly. He was hidden in the bushes because she didn't have anywhere else to keep him in this heat. You should be worried about the welfare of both your staff and the animal, not about pleasing a few rich kids." Reeves stiffened, visibly unnerved by the direct challenge. "Watch your tone," he whispered angrily. Tyler grinned as if he'd won something. "Yeah, watch your tone." Aiden's eyes flicked toward Tyler with dangerous calm. "I wasn't talking to you." Tyler bristled, stepping closer, invading Aiden's space with the swagger of a man who believed his father's money was armor. But Aiden didn't budge. He didn't even blink. He simply stared, expression unreadable, posture solid as stone. The years spent in combat zones had shaped him into something immovable, fearless because he had already known too much fear. Tyler faltered under that stare, and for a moment his bravado drained. Reeves, however, seemed to find new desperation in his fear of losing the club's wealthiest patrons. "Aiden," Reeves said, voice trembling in anger, "you're out of line. Tyler didn't mean harm. It was a misunderstanding." Aiden slowly crouched beside Mira, eyes scanning Bolt. The dog flinched when Aiden's fingers brushed the side where the club struck him. A bruise was forming beneath the fur, dark, angry, wrong. "Misunderstanding?" Aiden repeated, voice flat. "This," he tapped the spot carefully, "isn't a misunderstanding." Mira wiped her tears with the back of her hand. She looked exhausted, both physically and emotionally, her small, slender frame shaking from adrenaline. "I need this job," she whispered to Reeves, her voice breaking. "Please, I didn't do anything wrong." Reeves avoided her gaze again. "I'm sorry, Mira, but rules are rules." Tyler smirked. Aiden's patience snapped. He rose to his full height, towering over everyone around him. "I suggest you rethink your decision," Aiden said to Reeves, "because firing her for something she didn't do could be grounds for a lawsuit." Tyler scoffed. "Oh, please. Who's going to represent her? The stray dog?" Brian shifted again, biting his lip. His conscience wrestled visibly with fear. Finally, he spoke, voice timid. "Tyler, he's right. You hit the dog. We all saw it." The world stilled. Tyler turned, slow and lethal. "What did you say?" Brian swallowed hard, pushing his glasses up the bridge of his nose. I said, maybe we should just tell the truth." Tyler stepped closer, eyes burning with fury. He grabbed Brian's shirt collar. "You little traitor." Reeves immediately stepped between them. "Gentlemen, no fighting on the course." But Tyler shoved him aside. Aiden moved before anyone registered the shift. One hand clamped around Tyler's wrist. Not enough to cause injury, just enough to stop him cold. Tyler attempted to pull away, but Aiden's grip didn't budge. "Let him go," Aiden said. Tyler hesitated, then released Brian. Aiden's hand uncurled from Tyler's wrist. "This isn't over," Tyler hissed, stepping back and dusting off his shirt like the air itself had dirtied him. "You'll regret this, both of you." He pointed at Aiden with a shaky finger. "And you, whatever you think you are, you're nothing here." Aiden's eyes narrowed slightly. "I don't need to be anything." Tyler scowled, motioning for his friends to follow as he stalked away toward the clubhouse. Brian lingered for a second, casting a remorseful glance at Mira. "I'm sorry," he murmured before jogging after the group. Reeves sighed deeply, pressing a hand to his forehead. "Aiden, I don't know why you had to escalate things." Aiden didn't answer. He lifted Bolt carefully from Mira's arms. "I'm taking him to Dr. Grant." Mira blinked. "You know a vet?" "Yes," Aiden said. "A good one." He glanced at her trembling hands. "And you're coming too." Reeves sputtered. "She's suspended." Aiden turned. "Try to stop us." Mira blinked at Aiden in disbelief, hope flickering where fear had lodged itself firmly moments before. Reeves backed down quickly, waving them off with a huff. "Fine, but this will be noted in both your files." Aiden didn't bother responding. Files meant nothing to men who had survived explosions under collapsing buildings. He walked toward the edge of the course, Bolt tucked safely in his arms. Mira hurried beside him, wiping her cheeks, voice barely above a whisper. I didn't expect anyone to help me." Aiden didn't look at her. "You didn't deserve what happened." Mira swallowed hard. "Are you always like this?" "Like what?" Strong, calm, unshaken. Aiden's jaw tightened. "No." She waited, sensing more beneath that no. But Aiden stayed silent. His past belonged to a different world, a world he Wasn't sure Mira could understand. Yet, as they walked across the shimmering green under the oppressive sun, Bolt nestled in his arms and Mira keeping pace beside him, Aiden felt something unexpected. An echo of a purpose he thought he'd abandoned the moment he stepped off the battlefield. And behind them, hidden in the shadows of the clubhouse windows, Tyler watched with narrowed eyes and clenched fists. Hard, cold fury simmered beneath his entitlement. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The storm clouds gathered long before the first drop of rain touched the Pacific Crest Country Club, rolling in from the distant coastline like a silent army. By the time Aiden reached the old technical workshop behind the 11th fairway, a squat concrete building with peeling white paint and a rusted metal door, the sky had darkened into a threatening bruise. The workshop was where Aiden slept during long shifts, a private corner he preferred over the shared employee quarters. Inside, it smelled faintly of cut grass, engine oil, and the metallic tang of golf cart batteries. The single overhead light flickered weakly as he pushed the door open. Mira stepped in behind him, cradling Bolt against her chest. Her small frame shook from exhaustion and fear. Wet strands of dark hair clung to her cheeks, despite the lingering heat. "You can set him down here," Aiden said, clearing a wooden workbench he'd used more times for field dressings than mechanical repairs. Mira laid Bolt onto a folded towel, eyes filled with worry. The pup whimpered softly, pressing his head into the towel as though hoping to disappear into it. Aiden crouched beside him, his large hand steady and careful. Bolt's ribs rose and fell too shallowly. His left hind leg trembled every few seconds from the pain. "It's not broken," Aiden murmured, palpating around the bruise. But he took a hard hit. His voice softened, though his face remained hard with focus. Years of battlefield medical training had burned a calm ferocity into him. Those instincts never left. Mira hovered anxiously. "Is he going to be okay?" Aiden lifted his gaze. Up close, Mira seemed even smaller, her brown eyes drawn tight with fear, her hands helplessly fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. She looked young, in a way that wasn't about age, but about how much the world had managed to hurt her. "He will be," Aiden said. "I've seen worse injuries on stronger dogs, but he needs proper care. I've called someone." "A vet?" she asked hopefully. "Better," Aiden replied. "Someone I trust." He stepped back and dialed a number from memory, the digits etched into his mind long before he ever imagined being back in a civilian golf course workshop. The call connected. A gruff voice answered. "Cross?" "Grant, it's me." A pause. Then, "Where are you?" "Back in town." "No kidding," Grant muttered, though under the irritation there was relief. "What do you need?" "A favor." "Of course you do." Aiden almost smiled. "Puppy, blunt force trauma, mild shock. Need you here?" Grant grumbled. "Text me the location. I'll bring supplies." When the call ended, Mira exhaled shakily. "You have a vet on speed dial?" "Not exactly," Aiden replied, cleaning Bolt's wound with disinfectant from a metal drawer. "Grant used to be a Navy medic, served with me. He's good." He didn't say more. Mira sensed there was more, but she didn't push. Instead, she knelt beside Bolt, stroking his fur. "I'm so sorry, boy," she whispered. Bolt responded to her voice, ears twitching despite the pain. Aiden watched her for a moment. Not the fear, but the gentleness. Something tightened in his chest. He turned away before the feeling reached his face. A sharp knock shattered the quiet. Aiden stiffened instantly, his hand automatically reaching toward his hip, where a holster would have been in another life. "Stay here," he whispered. Mira nodded quickly, scooting closer to Bolt. Aiden opened the door just wide enough to see two security guards wearing Navy uniforms with the club's crest. Their expressions were stiff and practiced, the type that belonged to men who followed orders without question. The older guard, a bald man with a drooping mustache, held a clipboard. His name tag read Hollis. His partner was younger, tall and wiry, with acne scars peppering his cheeks. "Mr. Cross," Hollis said, voice cold, "we're here to issue a formal mandate." Aiden didn't move from the doorway. "What mandate?" "Your friend," Hollis said pointedly, "has violated multiple rules. She brought an unregistered animal onto the course, endangered members, and caused property damage." The younger guard, Collins, added, "Management requires her to sign a statement confirming she was responsible." Aiden's eyes darkened. She wasn't responsible. Tyler hit the dog. Hollis shrugged. That's not what the official report will say. Mira stepped forward despite Aiden's attempt to shield her. Please, she said, voice trembling. I didn't mean to bring him into danger. I didn't know where else to keep him. I didn't. Hollis thrust the clipboard forward. Sign, Miss Allen, or pack your things. As of now, you're banned from the employee residence. Mira's breath hitched. Banned? Effective immediately, Hollis confirmed. Golf operations can't risk liabilities. Aiden's jaw flexed. You're punishing her for something Tyler caused. Hollis ignored him. Sign. Mira's hand trembled as she reached for the pen. Aiden's voice stopped her cold. Don't! Mira looked torn, her pride battling against fear, exhaustion, and desperation. Aiden, I don't have anywhere to go if I don't sign. You're not signing, he said firmly. Hollis groaned. Cross, don't make this harder. You already have, Aiden replied. His tone was calm, the terrifying calm of a man who didn't fear confrontation. Collins shifted nervously. Sir, we're just following orders. Then follow better ones, Aiden said. She signs nothing. Hollis's eyes narrowed. She's out then. Effective now. Mira's shoulders slumped. Please, she whispered. I can't get kicked out. You're not alone, Aiden said quietly. The guards left with stiff strides, satisfied with their job. Once their footsteps faded, Mira sank to her knees beside Bolt again. Her hands trembled visibly as she pressed them to her forehead. I have nowhere to sleep tonight. I was barely affording the dorms as it is. Her voice cracked completely. Aiden knelt beside her, placing one steady hand on her shoulder. You're safe here for now. She shook her head. I can't stay here. They'll fire you too. Aiden's expression hardened. They can try. Before Mira could respond, a car engine rumbled outside. Aiden stood instantly, muscles tensing, eyes narrowing. Not fear, training. A silhouette approached the door, walking with a distinctive limp. Aiden exhaled softly. It's Grant. He opened the door. A tall man in his late 40s stepped inside, carrying a worn leather medical bag. Dr. Grant Hayes had the rugged look of someone who'd spent a lifetime running into danger instead of away from it. His hair, once dark, was now mostly gray, cut short around the ears. A thin beard lined his jaw, peppered with silver. His face was heavily lined, as though each crease was a memory of someone he couldn't save. Cross, Grant said, scanning the room with sharp hazel eyes. You look like hell. Aiden smirked faintly. Good to see you, too. Grant's attention drifted to Mira and Bolt. Who do we have here? Aiden introduced Mira. She stood shyly, brushing back her messy ponytail. I'm Mira, she said quietly. Thank you for coming. Grant's gaze softened minutely. You did the right thing calling me. He set the bag down and crouched beside Bolt. Hey, little man, he murmured, gently feeling the bruised leg. Nasty hit, but you're tough. You'll be fine. Mira exhaled shakily. Thank God. He'll need rest, ice, fluids, Grant continued. But he'll heal fast. Shepherds are made of steel. He gave Bolt a soft scratch under the chin. Good boy. As Grant worked, Aiden paced the small workshop, thoughts grinding. Something wasn't right. He felt watched, hunted. Too many coincidences. Security showing up instantly. Tyler's smug retreat. Reeves's panic. He didn't like it. He didn't like any of it. When Bolt was bandaged and resting, Grant cleaned his tools. You still have a bad habit, Cross. What's that? Getting involved. Aiden didn't answer. Instead, he stepped outside into the humid air. Rain had begun to fall, a slow drizzle darkening the concrete. He crouched near the rear tire of his Jeep, habitually checking for pressure damage. Something metallic caught his eye. Something small. Something wrong. He reached under the chassis and pulled out a black box, no larger than his palm. A faint red LED blinked. Once, twice, pulse steady. A tracking device. His breath stilled. His mind sharpened instantly, instinctively. Grant, he called, voice dangerously even. Mira stepped outside too, clutching Bolt. What's wrong? Aiden held up the device between two fingers. Someone's been following us. Mira's face drained of color. They wouldn't. They would, Aiden said. People like Tyler don't let things go. Grant cursed under his breath. You sure it's from them? Who else? Aiden crushed the device in his hand until it snapped open, wires spilling out. Lightning rippled in the distance behind him. Mira hugged Bolt closer, shaking. What do we do? Aiden walked toward the Jeep, rain dripping off his shoulders. He opened the passenger door for her. Get in. Mira hesitated. Aiden, they'll come after you too. Let them. His voice was quiet, heavy, final. Mira climbed into the Jeep, Bolt tucked beside her. Grant stood in the doorway, arms folded. You're getting pulled back into trouble, Cross. Trouble found me first, Aiden replied. He turned on the engine, the headlights carved through the rain. He looked at Mira and Bolt, two beings who had no armor against the world closing in on them. I'm not letting them hurt you, he said simply. And with that, he drove into the storm. The wind howled across the Pacific Crest fairways like a restless animal searching for something it had lost, sweeping through the tall grass and rattling the old tin roof of the abandoned maintenance shed at the outer rim of the golf course. The shed stood isolated from the polished beauty of the manicured greens, its walls mottled with rust and age, its windows fogged with dust. For most workers, it was just a neglected relic left behind by previous groundskeepers. But for Aiden, it was the perfect place to protect Mira and Bolt, hidden, quiet, defensible. He had spent the last 2 hours reinforcing its vulnerabilities. Every window latch was checked, every loose board secured, every entry point mentally mapped. The shadows inside were thick and deep, swaying faintly with each gust of wind. Mira stood near the workbench, her hands nervously twisting at her shirt hem as she looked around. It feels different here, she whispered, like nothing from the golf club can reach us. Aiden looked up from the shelf where he was sorting old tools. His silhouette in the dim light seemed larger, almost too large for the cramped space, broad shoulders brushing the shadows, jaw angular and stern as stone. Things can always reach you, he said quietly. You just have to be prepared when they do. His voice carried no fear, only experience. Mira swallowed. Is this really necessary? Aiden turned toward her, wiping his hands on a rag. Yes, they tracked us. They found my Jeep earlier. That means they're looking and they're serious. Bolt lay on a folded blanket near the corner. His leg remained stiff in a makeshift splint, yet his ears were perked, alert, the golden brown eyes following every sound. Aiden had tied a strip of cloth loosely around his neck, letting the pup feel included. A soldier in miniature training. And Bolt needs rest, Aiden added. This place is safer than anywhere else on the club grounds. Mira approached the puppy, sitting cross-legged beside him. She stroked his fur gently. He's become braver since... everything, she murmured. Bolt leaned his head into her hand. Aiden watched them, something soft flickering in his eyes before disappearing behind discipline. Fear teaches you what matters, he said. Courage teaches you what you protect. Mira looked up at him. Who taught you that? War, Aiden replied simply. He didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. The scars on his forearms, the tightness in his shoulders, the haunted silence in his eyes told the rest. As dusk crept in, Aiden set to work instructing Mira. If something happens, he said, handing her a short metal pipe once used for flagpoles, don't swing recklessly. Aim for joints, knees, elbows. They buckle easy. Mira took the pipe hesitantly. I've never hurt anyone before. I'm not asking you to hurt anyone, Aiden corrected. I'm asking you to survive. He guided her, stance, adjusting her feet gently. Lower, bend your knees, keep your weight center. She obeyed, though her small frame trembled. Good, he murmured. Stronger than you think. Bolt watched with focused eyes, letting out a soft rumble as though agreeing. Aiden crouched beside the puppy next, holding up a gloved hand. Bolt, he said, voice low and calm. Attention. Bolt perked up. Guard. Bolt barked once, soft but purposeful. Aiden nodded approvingly. Even with that leg, he can warn us. That's all we need. Mira smiled faintly. You really believe he understands? Dogs understand more than people, Aiden replied. especially the brave ones. Night settled fast, clouds thickened, swallowing the last traces of sunset, and the wind grew sharper. Aiden dimmed the lantern to a near glow. Darkness was his ally, not theirs. "Try to rest," he told Mira. "I've got first watch." Mira curled up beside Bolt, the pup resting his head on her lap. Exhaustion soon pulled her into a fragile sleep. Aiden moved silently across the shed, checking his improvised alarm system, thin wires tied to metal cans near the doorways and side windows. Primitive, but effective. Darkness pressed against the shed walls like a living thing. Hours passed. The world outside grew quiet. Too quiet. No insects, no distant hum of golf carts. Just the whistle of wind and the heartbeat slow as thunder. Then, clang, the faintest rattle. Aiden snapped to attention. His body went rigid, instincts roaring awake. North window, he thought immediately. A glint of movement broke the silhouette outside. Not wind, not animals. He extinguished the lantern without hesitation. The shed fell into complete darkness. Mira stirred. "Aiden," she whispered, fear rising in her voice. "Quiet," he murmured, his voice barely audible. Bolt lifted his head, ears erect, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Aiden's senses sharpened to a needle's edge. Footsteps, soft but purposeful, crunched on gravel. 3 sets. Each weight distribution distinct. Trained? Maybe. Or just determined. Someone grabbed the shed door handle. Aiden moved to the side of the entrance, flattening himself against the wall, blending with the shadows like he had countless times on enemy soil. The handle turned slowly. Click. The door creaked open. A sliver of dim moonlight slid across the floor, revealing 3 silhouettes. They wore black tactical jackets, gloves, and ski masks. One carried zip ties, another a crowbar, and the third had a flashlight strapped to his chest. All 3 were muscular, tall, their movements quiet, men hired for intimidation. Their leader, the one with the crowbar, stepped inside first. He had a thick neck, broad shoulders, and walked with a slight limp, as if an old injury had hardened him rather than weakened him. His eyes, visible through the mask openings, were small and hard. "Check the back," he whispered harshly. "Boss wants the girl and the evidence. No mistakes." Aiden felt a spark of cold fury. Boss? Tyler's father? Powerful? Wealthy? Merciless? The first intruder moved left, the second right, scanning the space. Their boots echoed softly on the concrete. Mira clutched Bolt, trying to keep him silent, though their fear hung heavy in the air. Aiden waited until the second intruder stepped closer. Then he struck. With a silent step forward, Aiden slipped behind the man, wrapped one arm around his throat, and locked the other hand behind his head. He applied pressure, just enough to cut blood flow, not air. The intruder struggled silently, knees buckling. He slumped to the ground unconscious. Aiden lowered him gently to avoid noise. The leader spun around suddenly. "What was that?" he hissed. His flashlight flicked to the side of the room, but revealed nothing. Aiden pressed himself into shadow again. The second intruder, breathing heavily now, approached the center of the shed. He turned his flashlight upward, illuminating the dusty beams. Aiden struck from above, jumping down silently from a low shelf. He wrapped his arm around the intruder's head and jammed his thumb into the man's carotid artery, the pressure sending a shock through his system. The man collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. 2 down. The leader backed toward the tool room, gripping his crowbar tightly. "Come out, you coward!" His voice trembled despite the threat. He kicked open the small tool room door. Inside, Mira gasped. Bolt growled louder, the fur along his spine rising. Aiden moved instantly, sprinting across the shadows. But the leader was already stepping into the room, the crowbar raised. "Found you!" he snarled. But Bolt, despite his splint, launched at him like a lightning bolt. The puppy's jaws clamped onto the man's forearm, teeth sinking through glove and skin. The intruder screamed, swinging his arm desperately. But Bolt held on, growling fiercely. "Bolt!" Mira screamed, seizing the metal pipe Aiden had trained her with. With every ounce of strength she could gather, she swung. The pipe slammed into the intruder's shoulder with a metallic crack. The man staggered, dropping the crowbar. Aiden rushed in, grabbing the man by the collar and slamming him against the wall. The impact knocked the air from his lungs. Aiden twisted the man's arm behind his back with a sharp, practiced movement. The man howled. Bolt released his bite and limped back to Mira's arms. Aiden forced the intruder onto the ground. He reached into the supply rack, grabbed a coil of Caddie rope, and tied the man's wrists with military efficiency. The other unconscious men were dragged into a row beside him, bound tightly. Aiden stood over them, chest rising steadily, his breathing calm despite the fight. Mira knelt on the cold floor, holding Bolt protectively. Her eyes shone with adrenaline and disbelief. Are we safe? Aiden checked the door, the windows, the darkness beyond. For now, he said, but this is just the beginning. The wind roared outside like applause from unseen mountains. Inside the shed, 3 masked men lay defeated at Aiden's feet, mute proof that the line between battlefield and peaceful golf course had vanished the moment cruelty struck a defenseless animal. And Aiden Cross, once a soldier, now stood in the storm again, not because he sought war, but because war had come seeking him. The first rays of morning filtered through the misty air above Pacific Crest Country Club, spreading thin beams of gold over the dew-soaked fairways. It should have been a peaceful dawn, the kind golfers cherished, where the silence felt sacred and the world seemed gentler. But today, that calm shattered under the wail of police sirens weaving through the sprawling course roads, blue and red lights slicing through the early haze. Aiden stood in front of the old maintenance shed, his posture straight and grounded, like an immovable pillar against the chaos. His dark t-shirt was torn at the shoulder from the scuffle inside hours earlier, and there was dried dust smeared along one jawline. Yet his eyes were sharp, fully awake, scanning every movement with the practiced vigilance of a SEAL who had never truly left the battlefield. Bolt lay at Mira's feet, still protective despite his injured leg, the faint growl in his throat fading only when Mira stroked his ears. She herself looked exhausted, brown hair messy, shirt damp from tears and sweat, but her chin was lifted in defiance. "Is it over?" she whispered. Aiden shook his head. "Not yet." The first police cruiser stopped abruptly in front of them. The door swung open, revealing Sheriff Raymond Cole, a broad-shouldered man in his early 50s with a closely trimmed gray beard and deep-set eyes that held years of dealing with privileged troublemakers. His uniform sat snug across a barrel chest, his gait steady but tired. "Morning," Cole muttered, "or whatever you want to call this." His gaze scanned the bound intruders lined up on the concrete floor of the shed. "Hell of a mess, Cross." "They came armed, broke in, tried to kidnap Mira," Aiden said. His tone was flat but forceful, each word clipped with soldier-like precision. The sheriff crouched beside the intruders. Masks, gloves, tools for breaking and entering, hell, zip ties. He looked back at Aiden, brow furrowing. "This wasn't random." "No," Aiden said. "It was sent." Cole stood slowly. "You mind explaining why 3 thugs would target a Caddie?" Mira stepped forward, voice shaking but steady. "It's because of their sons, Sheriff. The ones who hurt Bolt on the green. They tried to blame me. They threatened me. And then—" Her voice cracked. Aiden placed a hand on her shoulder. "Their father sent these men," he finished, "to get her to sign papers, or scare her, or worse." Cole's jaw tightened. "Damn politicians!" Before he could say more, a sleek black SUV rolled across the grass, ignoring the designated cart paths. Aiden's eyes narrowed. He recognized the entitlement in the reckless way it swerved. The vehicle stopped, and a tall, silver-haired man in a charcoal suit stepped out. Elliot Carrington, a wealthy businessman in his late 50s, with a perfectly pressed jacket and the kind of smooth tan that came from expensive vacations, not outdoor labor. His son, Tyler, slithered out from the passenger side, his blonde hair perfect despite the early hour, his face twisted with righteous indignation. "Sheriff Cole," Elliot Carrington barked, marching toward them. "I demand that man be arrested immediately." He jabbed a trembling finger toward Aiden. "He assaulted my employees." Aiden didn't move, didn't even flinch. Beside him, Mira stiffened, clutching Bolt closer. Cole raised a brow. "Your employees?" "Yes," Elliot snapped. "My groundskeeping contractors. They told me this. This violent ex-soldier attacked them without warning, Broke into the shed. Cole turned slowly, giving the man a long, steady look that carried decades of skepticism. So, you're telling me your contractors came here with zip ties, gloves, masks, and break-in tools? Because why? To trim hedges? Elliot's face faltered, the polished theatrics slipping for a heartbeat. But he recovered quickly. They were checking on a disturbance. They heard a girl screaming. Funny, Cole said flatly. We didn't get any calls. Tyler stepped forward now, sneering. Look at him, he spat at Aiden. He's unhinged, Sheriff. He tried to kill us yesterday. Aiden stepped forward once, controlled and quiet. What I did yesterday was stop you from hurting a defenseless puppy. And today, I stopped your father's hired men from abducting a woman. That's not unhinged. That's called defense. Tyler's bravado faltered, but only for a moment. He's lying, he muttered. They're all lying. Elliot crossed his arms. I want him in cuffs. Sheriff Cole exhaled heavily. And I need evidence, Mr. Carrington. More than your opinion. He turned to Aiden. Cross, tell me what happened from the start. Aiden explained, not just the break-in, but the attack on Bolt, the threats on Mira, the sudden eviction from staff quarters, and the previous intimidation attempts. Cole listened, jaw clenching tighter with each detail. When Aiden finished, the sheriff motioned to one of his deputies. Search them. Phones, wallets, pockets. The deputy, a young, wiry officer with freckles, nodded and began patting down the intruders. Moments later, he held up a burner phone. Sheriff, this was on the leader. Cole snatched it. Locked? No, sir. Must have been mid-text. The sheriff tapped the screen, eyes narrowing. Well, I'll be damned. Elliot stiffened. What? Cole lifted the phone so Aiden and Mira could see. On the screen, a message thread. Take the girl. Destroy her phone. Don't leave witnesses. Payment after. Elliot's face went pale, a sickly ashen shade that made him look suddenly older. Tyler took a step back. That's fake, Elliot stammered. Someone planted that. Cole shook his head. Funny. GPS puts this phone at your house last night and... His finger scrolled. You texted the number yourself, right here. Make sure she signs. No loose ends. Elliot's breath hitched. Sheriff, listen. No, Cole growled. You listen. You just funded an assault. And if Cross hadn't been here, that assault could have turned into something much worse. The deputy behind them had pulled off one of the intruder's gloves. Beneath it, teeth marks, fresh, red, unmistakable. Sheriff, the deputy said. Looks like the pup bit him on the job. Cole nodded toward Bolt. Good dog. Mira hugged Bolt tighter, eyes filling with pride. Cole turned to two more deputies. His voice was cold steel. Cuff them. Elliot's composure shattered. This is outrageous. I will sue. You'll sit down, Cole snapped, and you'll shut your mouth. You endangered half the staff on this green. Tyler panicked. Dad, do something. But his father was already being shoved into the cruiser. As deputies collected evidence, groundskeepers, janitors, and even a few early golfers appeared on the path. They whispered among themselves, recognizing the powerful family finally facing consequences. From the crowd stepped an older gardener, Mr. Alvarez, a wiry man with leathery skin and sun-bleached hair. He raised a hand. Sheriff, I saw what happened yesterday. That young man, he pointed to Aiden. He saved that girl and her dog. Those boys tormented staff for years. We stayed quiet because we needed the job. More workers stepped forward. A dishwasher from the clubhouse, a Caddie with trembling hands. Even the old maintenance manager, wearing suspenders and a faded cap, lifted his voice. Carrington's men threatened all of us. Aiden's the only one who did what we were all too scared to do. Sheriff Cole nodded solemnly. Your statements will help. Elliot glared through the cruiser's window as the community turned against him one by one. But the law was already closing in. In less than an hour, both father and son, and their hired thugs, were driven off the course in handcuffs. The morning sun rose higher, burning away the mist, revealing the bright green fairway where everything had begun. Mira inhaled shakily. It's over, she whispered. Aiden looked toward the horizon. It's beginning, he corrected softly. But the worst part is done. In the days that followed, Pacific Crest underwent a quiet transformation. Those who had stayed silent too long found their voices. The board of directors, horrified by the scandal, issued a formal apology to Mira and offered Aiden a position as security training specialist, overseeing emergency protocols and staff safety, something he accepted only after much convincing. Mira found new work as the veterinary assistant of Dr. Grant, helping Bolt with rehabilitation. Bolt himself healed quickly, too quickly as Grant joked. The puppy was no longer a fragile creature trembling in the bushes. He grew stronger every day, his gait steady, his eyes bright with purpose. Every morning he ran, well, more like hopped, beside Aiden as they jogged along the paved golf cart paths at sunrise. That routine became a quiet ritual, Aiden's heavy, disciplined footfalls, Bolt's enthusiastic thumping, Mira's soft laughter trailing behind them. Weeks passed. The club returned to normal, or at least the closest thing to normal after a storm. But for Aiden, a different storm brewed inside. One evening, when the sky glowed amber and violet above the rolling greens, he led Mira and Bolt to the top of the ridge overlooking the 18th hole. "Mira," he said softly. She turned to him. The fading sunlight brushed her features, warm, bright, steady. Bolt sat between them, tail wagging, sensing something important. Aiden reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, heavy object, a gold and silver seal trident, edges slightly worn from years of service. Mira's breath caught. "Aiden, that's everything I am," he finished, "or everything I was." He placed it gently in her hand. "You keep it, because sometimes a man needs a reason to come back from the places life takes him." Mira closed her hand over the emblem, her voice trembling. "And what reason is that?" Aiden looked at her, really looked at her, with all the quiet vulnerability he usually kept buried beneath discipline and scars. "You," he said, and Bolt barked once, as if agreeing. They stood there, three silhouettes bathed in the last light of day, like a small, unlikely family built not from blood, but from courage, protection, and the moments when someone finally chose to stand up. The sun dipped behind the hills, painting the green in molten gold. For the first time in a long time, Aiden let the world feel peaceful. Sometimes miracles don't arrive with thunder or angels. Sometimes they come quietly, in the shape of a wounded puppy who refuses to give up, in the courage of a young woman who chooses truth over fear, or in the steady strength of a man who finally lets himself believe he deserves a home. And perhaps the greatest miracle of all is discovering that even in the darkest moments, God sends the right people to walk beside us, people who lift us, protect us, and remind us that we were never meant to face life alone. As you go back to your everyday world, your work, your worries, your private battles, remember that light can rise again, even on the mornings when the clouds seem too heavy. Believe that somewhere ahead, your own sunrise is waiting to break through. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need encouragement today. Leave a comment below to tell us what part moved you most, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another story of faith, courage, and hope. May God watch over you tonight and every night. May He place His shield around your home, and may He bless you with strength for the days ahead. If you're waiting for a miracle in your life, type Amen in the comments, and let your blessing begin.